sovereign, as you're the sovereign who looks over the world and all who live in it, help us this day to be encouraged by the work of your hand. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. So last night we had this presentation, and I asked the question, what do you know about what's going on in domestic missions? And it was an interesting response. One said, well, I think we have one mission. I'm like, okay. And so what we find is I've been doing these presentations with some of the other mission board members over the last 6 months or so. Places like Dallas. I was in Dallas in November. Last weekend was in Spokane. A couple weeks from now I'll be in Detroit. And so as we do more of these presentations, our desire is just to make everybody aware of really what's all going on. And I realize that it can take 7 times to hear something to actually remember it, so I'm not expecting you to remember it all today. We'll have a video, you can go back and watch it in the future, it's good. But there's a lot of really exciting things going on domestically, and so I'm hoping to talk about some of those with the time today. And really what my hope is for each of you individually is you get energized about the work that's going on. Sometimes, especially nowadays in our world, there can be a lot of things that are troubling. We talked this morning, Pastor was talking about, whether it's here in Eau Claire. I live in downtown Minneapolis. I have for more than 10 years. There's plenty of things to be concerned about. But the Lord is really moving in the CLC and around the world. And I see it all the time, and it's just such a blessing. To give you some context, we're not going to talk about foreign missions today, but just to give you some context, in the CLC, we have about just over 6,000 souls. And yet overseas, we actually support over 135,000 souls in over 17 countries. If you even thought it had anything to do with us, you'd have to get your head examined, right? It's amazing the amount of work that's going on. 10 days ago, we were in Pakistan. We've been working with a group in Pakistan for a number of years, and now they want to go through colloquy. They have a vibrant group in Pakistan. It's just one more place that we're working with. We're finishing up another seminary in Bangladesh, where they're already looking at the next enrollment coming in. We have to expand the seminary in Tanzania because we just don't have enough room for all the people that want to go through seminary. So it's an awesome situation to be in, and so I'm hopeful today that you get encouraged. If you have questions, feel free to ask as we go. So be more of an interactive session as much as we can make it. So let's start kind of the why, the who, and the how of what the mission board is doing at the moment, okay? So it's not that we're necessarily doing a lot of new things. In fact, if you look at the things that we're actually doing, it's relatively the same. And so when you look at the mission board's work, and I'll be honest, it was a situation for me that I didn't fully understand. It took me a year to be on the mission board to fully understand what was going on. There's a lot of stuff going on, but I was like, hey, what are we really doing domestically, and why are we not spending as much time domestically, and all these questions that I had. And when we actually did the survey of the Synod body in 2022, the irony is that 2/3 of the Synod thought what we were doing domestically was acceptable, fine. Now that might shock you a little bit. Only 1/3 of the Synod actually thought we should be doing more domestically in 2022. And so if you look at traditionally what we've done domestically, it's been committees, getting together, putting out, let's say, inserts, these types of things. And nothing wrong with any of that. That's good. But the question that we started asking is how are we building? How are we helping the growth inside of the domestic area? And when we thought about that, we really thought about it in terms of, it actually ties very closely to what Pastor Radical was talking about this morning. How do we get each of us individually to realize what we have as an opportunity in our own unique personal mission fields? How has this become less about somebody else doing something on our behalf and more about what we do individually? And so as we thought about it, we wanted to shift the focus more towards these individual gifts in our relationships and less about forms and structures and committee meetings and those things. And what we talk about a little bit is, instead of being reactive, being much more proactive as a group. Now, what does that actually mean in terms of what we're doing? So in the past, we've had TVBS. I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with it. We've also had this thing called Diaspora List. Last night, some people were asking, well, what exactly is a diaspora? Like, what does the word mean, actually? Diaspora is basically just the scattered, right? It's the scattered believers. It could be anywhere. Diaspora is looking at those scattered believers. And both tools we've really underutilized. We've had them for decades, but they haven't been fully utilized as well as maybe we think we could do. And so as part of that, if you look at how we run the global or the foreign fields, the foreign fields has Pastor Ullman. He's a coordinator. All of the inbound questions and asks come to Pastor Ullman. He gets together with the board. We make decisions, disseminate it out. But there really wasn't a domestic coordinator, someone that is there to help bring together what we're doing domestically. And so what we've been working on over the last year is really building this seat within the mission board of a domestic coordinator to help be a liaison for all of the different work that's going on around the nation. And part of this functions, you can see here, collect and analyze information, make home visits on contacts, facilitate preaching stations, organize local outreach activities. And so over the last year, we've been really consolidating this and having it work very similarly to what we're doing in the foreign fields. Now, one of the things that I think is important to understand from a scope, because this is where I used to get really frustrated at conventions. I'm like, why aren't we spending more money on domestic? It seems way out of whack. So let's just give you some context, okay? The U.S. comprises 4% of the global population. If we did nothing else than just let inbound requests come in, that would theoretically mean that every 20 requests, one would come from the United States. Just simple math, right? If you look at over the last 10 years, 15, 20 years, do you have any idea how many requests the mission board has had domestically? 3. Okay? So what you have to understand too is so much of the work that we do is based on requests that come in from others. And I think that's an important part of understanding what the role is of the mission board domestically and what that means for all of us as well. Now with that, let's start with VBS or TVBS. This is not a new concept. This has been around a long time. Last night we talked about where'd the van go? Like, okay, we got rid of the van. All right, side note. But there's still a ton of activity going on, and a lot of it has been published, but it don't always get out to everybody, right? We'll talk about what's going on in the spokesman. We'll talk about what's going on in clergy talk. We'll talk what's going on in handouts or bulletins, whatever it is. But we also understand that we need to hear it a bunch of times. So there's a lot of work going on in TVBS. In fact, there is half a dozen to a dozen different, just in the last 12 months, TVBS type activities that are happening right now. And in fact, there's some really exciting things. Not only is TVBS picking up speed, but it's no longer just a summer activity. Hey, we're going to go send somebody for a week somewhere, or send a few people for a week. In fact, one of the things that we're actually looking at with TVBS now is how do we do it year-round? Because one of the things that you find is if you look at the reason people come to a congregation and become members, and I think you guys have done some of the study, the number one, someone they knew invited them. 95% of people that join a congregation come because they were invited by somebody else. The other big one is VBS. Historically, it's been a very large reason why people have come and joined us. But if you think about VBS, historically, it's been these weeks, whatever it might be, but what we're trying to do is look at new ways to do it. So for example, just as an idea, you might say, I'm going to do VBS the first Saturday of every month for a morning. And because I do it every single month, your local community realizes, hey, you know what, this congregation over here does this in the morning for 4 hours every single month. I can go drop my kids off and do my shopping. And it becomes consistency, right? A lot of times the big challenge that we have in evangelism is we're just not present consistently. And so as we look at things like VBS, we're trying to take different views on it. In fact, there are some discussions going on right now is can we make VBS more of like the foreign mission helper trip, which would be awesome. So for those that have gone on mission helper trips in the past, mission helper trip is you go to a foreign field for 2 weeks and you basically go site to site to site and do a 1-hour Sunday school. And having gone on one in Tanzania 18 months ago, you usually get to interact with somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 kids over the course of 2 weeks. It is awesome. And if we could do stuff like that locally in our own congregational areas, that would be phenomenal. So there's things that are going on. And with that, we've tried to expand the manpower mobility. And so what we're doing here is we're not abandoning the small rural congregations, but we're basically, as Mission Board, becoming a clearinghouse of ideas. There's been tons of ideas that have been done over time. Yes, we need to improve our website. We have 7. Okay, I've said it. Move on. But we're trying to do a better job of getting the communication out regularly to everybody. But if you have questions, if you know anybody in the CLC that has questions on it, they can reach out to us because we have a lot of the things that have been tried at other congregations. You may have not seen it, but in the Spokesman, I think it was 6 to 12 months ago, there was an article on the Winter Haven congregation. One of those 3 requests, by the way, was from Winter Haven. And what they did was they created a mothers group in Winter Haven that would meet once a month. And their request was really simple. It's like, hey, we just need some arts and crafts and blankets because we're going to do it out on the lawn on Florida. Well, now through their Facebook group, they get anywhere from 30 to 50 every month as part of that program. And they do basic TVBS as part of that program. And the community, in fact, it's gotten so popular that a bunch of bloggers in Facebook, like mothers groups, are promoting it in their groups. And so it's kind of bred a life of its own, which is an amazing gift. And so those are the kind of things that we're looking at as we go forward. And this ties to this idea of, can we, instead of looking at these specific events, can we make them more consistent? And the question that we have from a mission board back to congregations is going back to that whole idea of a request. What do you need? See, the problem is that we always assume that there's not enough resources or money or whatever it is to do things, and that's never true. It's kind of like saying, hey, the Lord doesn't have enough resources to get whatever it's, as I say it, it sounds that silly. If you really look at congregations, you look at the mission board every year has a line item for domestic missions for a budget that never fully gets spent. Ever. We just don't ask. We don't ask for help. One of the things that I've appreciated about Messiah is that I've actually witnessed you going outside of the congregation into other congregations to get support or help. Last night after this conversation, one of the individuals here said, hey, why don't we just get a group together and go travel to one of these mission groups for the great weekend? Like, that's awesome. You don't need approval, just go, right? And so part of this is actually starting to think a little bit differently about how we approach it, where Vacation Bible School just might be one of, a consistent event of things that we do. And what we're really trying to do on the mission board is build capacity. There are so many people that are willing to do something. They're just not sure where to go apply those gifts. And so my encouragement to you is, if you're compelled by the Spirit to help, just reach out. If you are needing help and support, reach out. And as a mission board, what we're trying to do is we're trying to just enable the capacity within the synod. And so as an example, it was awesome. There was 22, I think is the current number, 22 ILC students that are ready to go on TVBS. It would be a shame if we didn't give them the opportunity, right? And so we want to think a little bit differently about how we're going about TVBS and how we're using those gifts. So let me pause there. Is there any questions on TVBS? Perfect. It was that clear. Awesome. All right. So let's move on to diaspora. Knowing again what it means, diaspora is the scattered. Now, we've had the diaspora for decades. This is not a new concept. We've been using it, it's been there, but we haven't leveraged it at all. And there's been, even 10 years ago, there was some work, I know, in like the Minnesota conference where we were trying to pull this together just for the Minnesota conference. And you'll see some of the outputs of some of that work. But really what it is we all know, I'm sure everybody in here knows somebody that's living outside of the Eau Claire area that maybe is isolated. By the way, having traveled to Tanzania and watching lions hunt, do you know how they hunt? They isolate. They isolate, then they kill. Have you ever noticed that's how the devil does it too? They isolate, then they kill. And so part of this whole idea of diaspora is how do we unisolate people? How do we get people back into the group so they can be in the Word and be encouraged together? And it's been absolutely amazing what has happened in a very short period of time. And so this idea of those who are scattered went everywhere preaching the Word, Acts 8:4. So what we're doing is we're moving from informal conversations to organized tracking, and the goal is to identify geographic hotspots where we can be much more proactive going forward. So give you an idea, here's a heat map. This is the data guy in me, like this is a heat map. By the way, it's funny, your thumbs up, Jim, right? Perfect. I was in Dallas, and I showed this graph, and a guy goes, "We got people in Pennsylvania?" I'm like, "Yeah, we got some people in Pennsylvania." He goes, "I'm about to move back there. Tell me who they are." I'm like, "This is great. Can we have you start the first service?" So that's the kind of work that's going on right now. But just to give you an idea, this is about 50 to 60% of the people in the synod. So in order for us to do even more of what we're doing, we need everybody to help us centralize the data so that we can see the hotspots and get the groups together. So an example of one of these hotspots is Nebraska. Oh, I jumped one ahead. So in Nebraska, you can see here now we have a group meeting in Lincoln. And what's interesting is you look at the geography of this, you've got 3 congregations, Valentine's 5 hours, Sioux Falls is 3.5, and Blue Springs, Missouri 3.5. But now we have a congregation really right in the middle of all of them, and you can see where all of these different people were living that, in fact, in many cases didn't even know the other person in the other dot existed. And now they get together, and they're meeting regularly. This would be another new mission congregation. If it was just this one, it would be awesome. It isn't. Another example, North Carolina, Sanford. We've got people in Jamestown, Salisbury, the whole North Carolina corridor, Sanford. That group has been meeting regularly. Awesome, and Frank Gant, sharing the responsibilities. And as a result of that, getting this group together who is meeting regularly. It's been a blessing, an awesome blessing of the Lord. Again, if that was it, we'd stop there. It would still be great, but there's more. We also have Brainerd, Minnesota. Again, you have a number of congregations, Ponsford, Morris, Fridley, and a number of people that are meeting in this area. And so as these groups continue to form and they continue to go out, there's opportunity not just for what's happening there with that group locally, but how the other congregations can support them. Because often cases, these small groups, they might not have hymnals. They might not have a place to worship. They might not have a regular pastor. All the stuff that we take for granted in congregations when we have all that. Having been in a congregation that didn't have a pastor at all for almost 3 years, I understand what that means. And so my comment is we have an awesome opportunity to help out our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ around the country. I'm not done yet. We haven't talked about Iowa yet. So in the last Spokesman, if you haven't seen it, you might have seen this note on what's going on in Iowa. So in Iowa, as a specific case, we're meeting in Des Moines. Pastor Krause is supporting this group. 4 hours to Okabena, 2.5 hours to Austin, Minnesota. And you would think, oh, a lot of those members are coming just from these congregations. They're not. I know you have members from here that are there. And as a result of that first group getting together, again, the scattered flock being identified through the diaspora list, we now had our first meeting on November 9th, and if you saw the picture in the Spokesman, they actually had 29 souls at the service. But here's the cool thing. You think, oh, it's 29 souls. That's a little stat. The average congregation size in the CLC is about 33 people. It's an interesting stat. I go around the world, and I was in Juarez, Mexico, and the pastor there is like, Jeff, we're so small. We're not this big, like 25 people. And I said, you know what the average congregation size is? He's like, no. I said, it's 33 people. He's like, really? I said, yeah, man, you're good. Like, just do what you're doing. It's true around the world. The average congregation size in Tanzania, about 33 people. It's very common to have these small home church groups. It's very normal worldwide. 29 souls attended, but here's the big one. They had visitors, people that were not members. And so there's not just the output of we can get those that are inside of our membership together, but it naturally creates an opportunity for additional outreach opportunity. Are you encouraged yet? Seriously. It's okay to say hallelujah, like at some point, it's fine. But what I want you to understand here is we are trying to do more of this. There weren't any buildings. There's no committees. There's just people, the word, and a place to gather. And my encouragement as part of what we're doing is, and this goes back to the service, of what you're all able to do. One of the ironies or the interesting things I always find when we look at the foreign fields, when they make requests, the interesting thing is it always comes down to one person. Almost every single one of our foreign fields started by one person going out into the fields and proclaiming the gospel. And they're not always the same way or the same place. You're like, well, that's easy because they're in a foreign field and no one believes. Do you know Tanzania, population-wise, is in the mid-90s for people that confess Christ? Way more than the United States. And yet you go to another place like India, it's like 2 to 3%. It doesn't matter. It's not about the soil. It's about the seed. It doesn't matter what the soil is. And so the encouragement back to the group is that you might say, sitting in the pew and thinking, hey, you know what, I'm just one person. You have your own walk in your own life and the people that the Lord has put you in the place today to help them. Back to the sermon today, every morning you get up and pray for that opportunity. Guess what? You're going to get it, which probably freaks a lot of people out a little bit, right? But you're going to get it. The Lord, it's not a resource problem. That's never what the issue is. And so what we're doing here in this case in the mission board side is more focusing on how do we just bring simply those people together and let the Lord do the work through the seed. It's that simple. And so making the most of the diaspora list, one of the challenges that we do run into, and it's a legitimate concern, is getting everybody to participate. And so you're all connected throughout the CLC. My encouragement to you is encourage others. In fact, what happened in places like Iowa, some of the people that showed up weren't even on our diaspora list. There were family and friends that just reached out and said, hey, you know what, this is going on, you should go. And so a big part of this whole us going out and talking is more people that we have know this is going on, the more that the information can get out to the rest of the synod. This is super positive. We need to be telling other people and encouraging other people. Some of the things the mission board is doing to try to make sure that we're also being conscious of the privacy concerns and those things is we have one central, Pastor Daub is the central point that it all flows in. So it's not like everybody has access. We're also not even asking for all the contact information. Literally, if we just had address and home congregation, we could make the map. So part of this is, can we continue to make more people comfortable with sharing this? Because when we've had this, the more we get and the more we put into that list, the more opportunities we find, like the 4 I just shared with you. I mean, think about that. 4 new preaching stations in literally the last year. And I think we're just getting started, honestly. So part of what we run into is it's not everybody knows. And so some of the things that we're doing is more spokesman articles. You're going to see a domestic-focused article in the spokesman each time. We've had manual campus sessions. We're doing more mission festivals like this and speaking to the congregations one-on-one, getting more TVBS awareness out, and really this whole domestic mission coordinator position to be the central hub for everybody to communicate with. And why this all matters for you is it really is going to, I think, get everybody excited about what's actually already happening. And what we're trying to do is remove all this duplicated effort, right? In the end, the 29 in Iowa, now they know who each other are. In some ways, we just got to get out of the way and serve them in the way that they are asking for us to serve them. And so it reduces all of this administrative work, and it really creates more of a unification within our synod of helping each other. We start to see how we can help these other groups. And we've got a lot of places that we can help. Questions around that? Dan?
We have a lot of members at a distance here in our congregation. What do you consider diaspora? How far from the congregation?
So his question, I'm repeating it because his question is, what do we consider as diaspora? How far away? At this point, U.S., Canada, Mexico all sounds wonderful. If it's outside of that, we probably connect in one of our foreign fields as well. So I wouldn't limit it at this point. I mean, if you look at the list is U.S., Canada. In fact, when I was in Mexico, we had even talked about how do we get that group working more with the Southeast, conference, because they're isolated. They're one congregation, and they're in fellowship with us. They're actually closer. They're closer to the group in Texas by like 3x than they are to the group in Minneapolis. Like, the Texas people are right there. They're on the border. So the more of that we can know, the better we can connect dots. I wouldn't limit it.
Is our congregation's data in there?
I believe that we've got it at one point. There's probably a question if there's been an update, because that's the other problem is your data changes every year. So back to the statistician piece, check with your congregation and make sure you have the latest data. And that would be, I know that it can be challenging to get data in. Just being at convention, I know it can be challenging, but my encouragement is constantly give updated once a year or so. That's very helpful for the group. Good questions. Other question? How many churches do we reach out to for mission works each year? And when you say reach out, are you talking only domestically or foreign fields? Okay, so in foreign fields, it's actively, we've got, Pastor Ullman's on the road probably 6 months a year, and he does the loops and hits everybody. We have mission helper programs go out every summer. They hit different parts of the world, so that's pretty active. If you look domestically now, just what I was saying in the last 4 months or so, one a month, one every 6 weeks. Pastor Dobb is doing the same. So we are definitely trying to increase the activity, but there's 68 congregations or something like that domestically, 70, something like that. So there's quite a few to get to. There was a joke somebody said, one of the pastors in Mankato said he was going to have like a passport or a map that you had to go to a congregation, you could stamp your passport. Like, I visited this congregation, which is kind of a cool idea. but yeah, go ahead. In the back.
Is there always a physical preacher, or do you use technology similar to, instead of watching a service at home, still getting together and using technology to watch a service?
It can vary. Most cases, it's a physical preacher. I'm assuming you got those questions. They come into the mic, so we're good. But yeah, most cases, it's a physical preacher, but really, that's up to the group. Right? If the group's saying, like, hey, I'm in a remote place and I can't get a pastor all the time, it doesn't mean they can't still get together and watch something live. One of the blessings that I know in traveling myself that's been nice, because my congregation doesn't have it, is, my wife and I will watch a Messiah service when we're traveling overseas or something like that. Great question. Other questions? Pastor? Great point. Yeah, so the question or the comment was we should also think about getting into the women's quarterly, the branches, right? And getting some more information there. That's a good point. Other questions, thoughts, comments? Pastor?
One thing, the blessing of Messiah is the regional care services.
Mm-hmm.
I think that needs to be emphasized more of our congregations.
So his comment is that we should be emphasizing reaching out to care facilities in some of these places as well, because it's been an awesome blessing from Messiah. Other thoughts, questions? Another one.
We've been blessed to be able
Yeah, so the comment is that there's a lot of growth in these rural communities, and regardless of the age demographic of the rural communities, it's been an amazing blessing, and now we're starting to see growth as part of that, so it's really great. Other questions, comments? Okay. So one of the other things that's been a topic point in this is, in the past, we had this missionary at large that used to go out, and they'd spend like a year or two in a field, and then they'd move on to the next one. And it's been a long time, decades, since we've actually had that seat. But one of the things we're also looking at, is there a way to resurrect that? Now with the number of new preaching stations coming up, is there a way to launch a little, certain DNAs love evangelism. They love it's kind of the Apostle Paul approach. I like to set it up and then move on. And so there's some of these DNAs out there that like to do that, and we're like, well, can we capture some of that? Maybe we have these 4 preaching stations, and every quarter we do a circuit, and we go out and we spend a quarter there kind of building them up, getting them going, and then move to the next one and do that. So those are some of the other things that we're looking at right now. Again, taking this massive list of contacts that are at large in the diaspora and finding better ways to serve them. And so we've kind of coined this as, ironically, like when I first came on, I'm like, I'm so frustrated, we're not proactive. And they looked at me, they're like, there's 5 of us. And we've got 18 countries we're in. Like, how does this work? And so the term was, how do we become more reactively proactive? Which is interesting because it, again, ties right back to what the sermon was talking about this morning. Instead of, are we working or leaning in towards being ready? Is maybe the different way to say that. Are we ready to give an answer to the hope that's in us? Are we ready because there's these opportunities to go out and do it? And so really the focus for the mission board is go to readiness mode, always ready. How do we simplify things to be always ready? And so instead of us just doing busy work, we're working towards being ready. Ready for the call, ready for the question, just like we have been in many places around the world, and really trying to centralize the tools and the things that we can do, simplify those, and just be ready to act as soon as we hear it. Because a lot of times these are opportunities, and you want to strike while the iron's hot. And so that's the work that we're doing. But really what this boils back to is, like the sermon again today, it starts locally. It starts with us as each individual. And so our job is really connecting on the mission board side, is connecting dots and allowing the members to drive it. And so this ties back, and the way I'd like to leave this with you is this ties back to the conversation for you. What can you, not the congregation, you do? You can start with prayer. I mean, if we really take a moment and sit back, how often do we actually pray? I mean, first off, we have to be aware. Great. Okay, now we're aware. You're all aware now, right? So what can we do second? Well, we can pray. We can pray for the workers. We can pray for the field. We're tremendously blessed right now that there are more pre-The students going through Emmanuel than I think we've ever had. It's awesome. And so in the midst of all the discouraging news that's going on, there are so many positive things. The Lord's still sovereign. He still has it all under his control. Don't worry about it. The comment is, what can we do? Who's one? And when I challenged the group yesterday, I just asked them to think about who is one person in your life right now that you can start actively praying for and asking the Lord for an opportunity to share the hope that's in you. Who would that person be? I'm sure you know who it is off the top of your head. Right? I'd also ask you to continue to support some of the work going on. If nothing else, just let other people know it exists. And that's a big part of it, is the awareness piece right now. Make sure that you encourage all of the congregations to submit the diaspora. We've already seen the positive effects of what's happened. And as you also are able to share your personal outreach stories, it encourages others. One of the things that struck me when I heard the sermon was the boasting aspect. And I know that vulnerability-wise, that's one I struggle with a lot. And so the boasting side of it is more of, what is the Lord doing? The Lord is doing some awesome things, and I'm sure there's some awesome things going on in your own life. Tell others around you about it. You know, one of the things that happened to me, I totally was not expecting it is we have some stuff that we do on my side for evangelism within the business community. And I had a conversation with somebody, and a month later, someone came back to me, I didn't even know him very well, and said, hey, you know that conversation you had with them, that person's a Christian now. I still haven't talked to the first person I talked about. I'm sure that's happening to all of you. And the point is that we just don't see what the Lord is doing through our conversations. Those stories help encourage each of us to do more of it. And when the mission board was asked in 2022, what is the top priority? The top priorities that we were given from the body was funding resources and supporting startups and preaching stations. So that is what we are trying to do. And we need your prayers. And with that, then that next faithful step where I close out on this, just pray for boldness, pray for opportunities. The Lord will give them to you. He'll do it every day. I'd test him. You're going to lose, which is great. And it will work out well. And going back to that comment in these foreign fields, every single one of them, in fact, Tanzania will have doubled almost in the number of churches they've had since 18 months ago when we were there. And again, it all started with just one person. What's the Lord calling you to do? Any final questions? If not, thank you very much. Let's close with prayer. Lord, it's a blessing and a privilege to be able to serve you in the kingdom. Help us to not shy away from the opportunity. Fill us with boldness and the faith, that mustard seed faith that'll move mountains. We trust in you for our provision. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.